What happens when a police chief's son thinks he's above the law and assaults a 70-year-old Vietnam veteran in broad daylight? This arrogant man walked into my courtroom believing his father's badge would protect him from any consequences. But when I made his father choose between his son and justice, what happened next became the most talked about moment in courtroom history. The defendant stood there smirking as he told me, "My dad runs this town. You can't touch me, old man." The entire courtroom fell silent. But what nobody knew was that Police Chief Thomas Cole was sitting in the back of my courtroom watching his son destroy everything he'd spent 35 years building. And the decision he was about to make would break hearts, restore faith in justice, and prove that some fathers love their principles more than protecting their children's mistakes. Before we dive into this incredible story, less than 5% of you watching are actually subscribed. If you believe in real justice, in honoring our veterans, and in holding the powerful accountable, hit that subscribe button right now. This story is going to spread everywhere, and you don't want to miss what happens next. It was a cold November morning, and I was preparing for what seemed like a routine assault case. At my age, I've seen thousands of cases, but something about this one felt different. The victim was a 70-year-old Vietnam veteran named Robert Martinez. The defendant was 32-year-old Derek Cole, son of Police Chief Thomas Cole. If you're watching this for free and not a member yet, you're missing 90% of the stories that never make it to the public. Jaw-dropping cases, explosive courtroom moments, and verdicts that will leave you speechless. Join the membership now before this story convinces you anyway. The case file told a disturbing story. 3 days earlier, Robert Martinez had been walking his dog in the park when Derek Cole, driving his BMW at excessive speed, nearly hit him. When Martinez raised his hand to signal Derek to slow down, Derek stopped his car, got out, and confronted the elderly veteran. According to 3 separate witnesses, Derek shoved Martinez to the ground, causing him to hit his head on the pavement. When bystanders tried to intervene, Derek allegedly said, "Do you know who I am? My father is the police chief. Call the cops. I dare you." Then he drove away, leaving the 70-year-old veteran bleeding on the ground. Martinez suffered a concussion, 3 broken ribs, and a fractured wrist. He spent 2 nights in the hospital. The incident was captured on a nearby security camera, and when the footage went viral on local news, the entire city demanded justice. My courtroom was packed that morning. Local reporters, concerned citizens, veteran advocacy groups, and court watchers who follow my cases had all shown up. There was an energy in the room, a sense that something significant was about to happen. But here's what nobody in that courtroom knew yet. Police Chief Thomas Cole was sitting in the back row wearing civilian clothes, his badge tucked away. He hadn't told his son he was there, and the reason he came would shock everyone. At exactly 10:30 a.m., the bailiff called the case. The state versus Derek Michael Cole, charged with assault and battery on an elderly person. Now, let me tell you something. I've been doing this a long time. I can size someone up the second they walk through my doors. And Derek Cole, he walked in like he owned the place. Expensive suit, designer watch glinting under the courtroom lights, and that smirk, that arrogant smirk that made everyone in the gallery immediately dislike him. He didn't look remorseful. He didn't look concerned. He looked annoyed that he had to be here at all. Behind him entered his attorney, Marcus Richardson, one of the city's most expensive defense lawyers, the kind who specializes in getting wealthy clients out of trouble. I've dealt with lawyers like him my entire career. They think a fancy suit and a silver tongue can override the facts. Not in my courtroom. But here's the moment that caught everyone's attention. When Derek passed the row where Robert Martinez was sitting, wearing his Vietnam veteran cap and supporting his broken wrist in a cast, Derek didn't even glance at him. No acknowledgement, no remorse, nothing. And that told me everything I needed to know about this young man before he even opened his mouth. I looked up from my paperwork, and I'll tell you, my blood was already starting to boil. I'd already read the case file. I'd already seen the security footage. And I'd already made up my mind that this young man was going to learn a lesson today. "Mr. Cole," I began, my voice measured but firm, "you're charged with assault and battery on an elderly person, specifically on Mr. Robert Martinez, a 70-year-old Vietnam veteran. How do you plead?" Derek's attorney stood up quickly. "Your Honor, my client pleads not guilty. We believe this is a case of mistaken identity." I held up my hand. "Counselor, I asked your client, not you. Mr. Cole, do you have a voice? Because in my courtroom, defendants speak for themselves." I'm not interested in hearing rehearsed lines from a lawyer you're overpaying. Derek stood up, and this is where his arrogance really showed. He adjusted his suit jacket, looked directly at me with that smirk still plastered on his face, and said, "Not guilty, Your Honor. This whole thing is ridiculous." Ridiculous. The word hung in the air like a slap. I slowly removed my glasses and stared him down. Anyone who's ever watched me work knows what that means. When the glasses come off, somebody's about to get a reality check they'll never forget. Ridiculous, I repeated. Mr. Cole, I've reviewed the security footage. I've read the hospital reports. I've seen the photographs of Mr. Martinez's injuries. Would you like to reconsider your characterization of this case as ridiculous? Because I'll tell you what's ridiculous. A 32-year-old man assaulting a 70-year-old veteran and then standing in front of me acting like the victim. Derek glanced at his lawyer, who was frantically trying to signal him to stay quiet, but Derek's ego wouldn't let him back down. Your Honor, with all due respect, I cut him off immediately. Let me stop you right there. In my experience, when someone starts a sentence with all due respect, what follows is the most disrespectful thing they can think of. So go ahead, let's hear it. This is being blown out of proportion, Derek continued. Some old guy got in my way, I barely touched him, and now I'm being dragged into court like a criminal. The gallery gasped. Did he just call a Vietnam veteran some old guy? Did he just say he barely touched him when the man spent 2 nights in the hospital? I set down my glasses very carefully. My jaw tightened. I could feel every person in that courtroom holding their breath, waiting to see what I would do. Mr. Cole, I said, my voice still calm, but carrying the weight of absolute authority. Before we proceed, I want to understand something. Do you know who Mr. Martinez is? Derek shrugged. Some guy who was in my way. The disrespect was palpable. Robert Martinez, sitting in the gallery, showed no reaction. He sat with the quiet dignity that comes from a lifetime of service and sacrifice. But his fellow veterans in the courtroom were visibly angry, and frankly, so was I. I stood up from my bench and walked around to the front. Now, anyone who knows me knows I don't do that often. When I come down from that bench, something big is about to happen. Mr. Martinez, I said, looking directly at the elderly veteran, would you please stand and tell Mr. Cole who you are? Robert Martinez slowly stood, supporting himself with his good arm. Your Honor, my name is Robert Martinez. I served in the United States Marine Corps from 1968 to 1971. I did 2 tours in Vietnam. I was awarded the Purple Heart and the Bronze Star for valor. I'm a retired firefighter. I've lived in this city for 50 years. And 3 days ago, this man, he gestured toward Derek without looking at him, assaulted me for no reason other than I asked him to slow down in a public park. The courtroom was absolutely silent. I nodded respectfully to Martinez, who sat back down. Now, I turned back to Derek. Mr. Cole, do you understand what you just heard? You assaulted a decorated combat veteran, a man who risked his life for this country, a man who spent 30 years running into burning buildings to save people. And you called him some old guy who got in your way. You should be ashamed of yourself. And if you're not ashamed, I'm going to help you get there. Derek's smirk was starting to fade, but his arrogance hadn't. Your Honor, I didn't know he was a veteran. How was I supposed to know? My response was immediate. Mr. Cole, it shouldn't matter if he's a veteran or not. Assault is assault. But the fact that you think it would only matter if you knew his service record tells me everything I need to know about your character. You don't get to pick and choose who deserves to be treated like a human being. That's not how the world works, and it's certainly not how my courtroom works. But before I tell you what I did next, I need you to do something. In the comments below, tell me, have you or someone you love ever been disrespected because of their age? Have you seen young people treat elders with contempt? Share your story, because this is about more than one case. This is about respect, dignity, and how we treat the people who came before us. Derek's attorney jumped in, trying to control the damage. Your Honor, my client is young and made a poor choice of words, but the evidence will show... Evidence? I interrupted. Counselor, I've seen the evidence. In fact, let's watch it together, and I suggest you sit down and let the footage speak for itself, because right now, the more your client talks, the worse this gets for him. I signaled to the court clerk, who started playing the security camera footage on the courtroom monitor. Everyone watched in silence as the video showed exactly what happened. Derek's BMW speeding through the park, nearly hitting Martinez. The veteran raising his hand, Derek slamming on his brakes, getting out of his car, and violently shoving the 70-year-old man to the ground. The footage was clear, the assault was undeniable, and Derek's actions afterwards standing over Martinez, pointing at him while shouting, then casually getting back in his car and driving away. It was damning. When the video ended, I looked at Derek. Still think this is ridiculous, Mr. Cole? Because I'll tell you what I see. I see a bully. I see a coward. I see a grown man attacking someone who could be his grandfather. And I see someone who thinks the rules don't apply to him. Derek's face had gone pale. His lawyer was whispering urgently in his ear. But Derek's ego, that toxic combination of privilege and arrogance, wouldn't let him back down completely. Your Honor, Derek said, his voice slightly shaky now. I was having a bad day. I'd just gotten some bad news. I wasn't thinking clearly. My eyes narrowed. A bad day? A bad day? Mr. Cole, I've been on this bench longer than you've been alive. I've seen people who lost their jobs, lost their homes, lost their children come before me. You know what they don't do? They don't assault elderly veterans because they're having a bad day. Don't you dare insult my intelligence with that excuse. I walked closer to Derek, eliminating the physical distance between us. Let me tell you what I think happened, Mr. Cole. I think you've spent your entire life believing you're special. I think your father's position as police chief has shielded you from consequences. I think you've never been held accountable for your actions. And I think you walked into my courtroom today expecting that pattern to continue. Am I wrong? Because I'm rarely wrong. Derek tried to interrupt, but I held up my hand. I'm not finished. Don't interrupt me. You see, Mr. Cole, I've dealt with people like you my entire career, people who think their last name, their father's position, their family's money makes them untouchable. But here's what you're about to learn. In my courtroom, none of that matters. What matters is the law. What matters is justice. What matters is treating every human being with dignity and respect. And right now, you're failing on all three counts. Now, here's where the story takes the turn that nobody saw coming. I paused, looked toward the back of the courtroom, and said something that made Derek's blood run cold. Chief Cole, I called out, would you please come forward? The entire courtroom turned around. Sitting in the back row, standing up slowly, was Police Chief Thomas Cole. He'd been there the whole time. He heard everything his son said. He watched his son show no remorse. And the look on his face, it wasn't anger, it was heartbreak. Derek spun around, and for the first time since entering my courtroom, his arrogance completely shattered. Dad, what are you doing here? Chief Cole walked down the center aisle, each step heavy with the weight of 35 years in law enforcement. He was in his late 50s, gray at the temples, wearing a simple button-down shirt and slacks. No uniform, no badge, just a father watching his son destroy everything he'd taught him. I addressed the chief with genuine respect. Chief Cole, thank you for being here. I know this must be incredibly difficult. Chief Cole stood at attention, his police training evident in his posture. Your Honor, I appreciate you allowing me to be present. Derek was panicking now. His lawyer looked confused. The gallery was on the edge of their seats. What was happening? I continued, Chief, your son seems to believe that your position will protect him from the consequences of his actions. He's implied multiple times that because you run law enforcement in this city, he's somehow above accountability. I'd like to give you an opportunity to address that belief. The courtroom held its collective breath. This was the moment a father had to choose between protecting his son and upholding the principles he'd dedicated his life to. Chief Cole took a deep breath. His voice when he spoke was steady but filled with emotion. Your Honor, my son is wrong. He has always been wrong about that. I've spent 35 years serving this city. I've arrested drug dealers, murderers, corrupt officials. I put my life on the line to protect the innocent and uphold the law, and not once, not one single time, have I ever believed that my badge gave me or my family the right to break those same laws. Derek tried to speak. Dad, The chief held up his hand, and the authority in that gesture silenced his son immediately. Derek, be quiet. You've said enough. He turned back to me. Your Honor, I watched the security footage the day after the incident. I saw what my son did to Mr. Martinez. I've read the hospital reports. I know exactly what happened. And I'm here today not as Police Chief Cole, but as Thomas Cole, a father who failed to teach his son the most important lessons: respect, humility, and accountability. The chief's voice cracked slightly. I thought I taught him right from wrong. I thought I showed him what it means to serve others, to protect the vulnerable, to treat everyone with dignity regardless of their station in life. But somewhere along the way, I failed. And that failure, he gestured toward his son, that failure is standing right here. Derek's face crumbled. For the first time, tears welled up in his eyes. Dad, please, Chief Cole turned to his son. And what he said next? I've been doing this a long time, and I will remember it for the rest of my career. Derek, I love you. You're my son, and that will never change. But love doesn't mean protecting you from the consequences of your actions. Love means holding you accountable so you can become the man you're supposed to be. He looked back at me. Your Honor, I'm here to tell you and this court that whatever sentence you deem appropriate, you have my full support. My son assaulted a decorated veteran. He showed no remorse. He disrespected this court, and he disrespected everything I've spent my life standing for. He deserves to face the full weight of the law, and I will not interfere. He paused, then continued. In fact, if I could, I would ask you to be even more severe than you normally would be, because he needs to learn this lesson now before he hurts someone else. I'll tell you something. I've sat on this bench for decades. I've seen the best and worst of human nature. But watching a police chief, a father, stand in open court and ask me to throw the book at his own son, that was unprecedented. That took more courage than most people will ever understand. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Derek was openly crying now. Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't mean... Chief Cole's voice became firm. Derek, do you know what I did yesterday? I visited Mr. Martinez in his home. I apologized to him on your behalf, even though I know that doesn't undo what you did. I looked him in the eye and told him that my son's actions don't represent the values of this police department or this family. And do you know what he said to me? Derek shook his head, tears streaming down his face. He said, Chief, your son needs help, not protection. Help. And he's right. You don't need me to bail you out. You need to face what you've done and change. I had been listening to all of this with deep emotion. Now I spoke, and I'll admit my voice carried a weight I rarely feel. Chief Cole, I said, I want to thank you for your courage today. What you've done, standing here, putting justice above your natural instinct to protect your child, that takes more strength than most people will ever understand. I looked at Derek. Mr. Cole, do you understand what just happened here? Your father, a man who could have used his influence to make this go away, instead chose to uphold the law. He chose to honor Mr. Martinez. He chose to honor the badge he's worn for 35 years. That is what integrity looks like. Take a good, hard look, because that's the man you should be trying to become. Derek could barely speak through his tears. Your Honor, I'm so sorry. I was wrong about everything. I nodded. That's the first honest thing you've said since you walked into my courtroom. But sorry isn't enough, Mr. Cole. Words are cheap. Actions have consequences. And in my courtroom, you don't get to cry your way out of accountability. And what I said next, I didn't just want to punish this man. I wanted to transform him. I don't just enforce the law. I change hearts when I can. Subscribe right now if you believe in this kind of justice, because what comes next is a masterclass in accountability, redemption, and second chances. Derek Michael Cole, I announced, my voice formal. I find you guilty of assault and battery on an elderly person. This is a serious crime, made more serious by your complete lack of remorse when you first appeared before me. I paused, letting the weight sink in. Here is your sentence. You will serve 90 days in the county correctional facility. You will complete 200 hours of community service, specifically working with elderly veterans at the VA hospital. You will attend anger management counseling for 1 year. And you will write a formal letter of apology to Mr. Martinez, to be read in this courtroom, followed by a face-to-face meeting where you will apologize to him personally. Derek nodded, accepting each part of the sentence. Yes, Your Honor, but I'm not finished, I continued. You will also create a video apology that will be posted on the police department's social media accounts, where you will explain what you did, why it was wrong, and what you're doing to make amends. Your father has agreed to this because sunshine is the best disinfectant for arrogance. Furthermore, I said, after you complete your sentence, you will speak to the police academy recruits about privilege, accountability, and what happens when you believe you're above the law. Your father will arrange this. You will share your story, not to humiliate you, but to prevent other young people from making the same mistakes. The sentence was severe, but purposeful. Every element designed not just to punish, but to transform. That's how I operate. I'm not interested in just locking people up. I'm interested in making sure they never end up in front of me again. Chief Cole spoke up. Your Honor, I want to add something, if I may. Derek will also be moving out of my house. He's 32 years old. He's been living under my roof, under my protection, under my name. That ends today. He needs to learn to stand on his own, support himself, and understand that privilege is earned, not inherited. Derek looked at his father with devastation. Dad, it's time, son, the chief said, his voice breaking. It's time for you to grow up. I turned to Robert Martinez. Mr. Martinez, do you have anything you'd like to say? The 70-year-old veteran stood slowly, supporting himself with his good arm. Your Honor, I don't want revenge. I just want this young man to understand that every person he meets deserves respect. Age, rank, position, none of that matters. We're all human beings trying to live our lives with dignity. If he learns that lesson, then this whole experience will have been worth it. The grace in those words silenced the entire courtroom. Here was a man who had been assaulted, hospitalized, and disrespected, offering forgiveness and wisdom instead of anger. I've seen a lot in my years, but that kind of grace, that's rare. And it reminded me why I still believe in people. I addressed Derek one final time. Mr. Cole, you heard Mr. Martinez. A man you assaulted is showing you more grace than you deserve. I suggest you spend your time in custody thinking about that. Thinking about the kind of man you want to be. Thinking about whether you want to continue being the person who walked into this courtroom today, or if you want to become someone your father can be proud of. Court is adjourned. The gavel came down. As officers approached to take Derek into custody, Chief Cole walked over to his son. They stood face to face for a long moment. Then the chief did something that broke everyone's heart. He hugged his son tightly. I love you, the chief whispered, loud enough for nearby people to hear. But I love you enough to let you face this. You'll get through it. And when you do, you'll be better. You'll be the man I know you can be. Derek sobbed into his father's shoulder. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry. I know, son. Now prove it. The officers led Derek away. Chief Cole stood there watching his son disappear through the courtroom doors, tears streaming down his face. And I watched him and I thought, this is what real love looks like. Not protection from consequences, but support through them. I approached Chief Cole and extended my hand. We shook, a moment of mutual respect between two people who've dedicated their lives to service. You did the right thing, I said quietly. Chief Cole nodded. Doesn't make it hurt any less. No, I agreed, but it makes it worth it. Before the courtroom emptied, I made one more announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, what you witnessed here today is not just about one case. It's about the choice we all face when someone we love does wrong. Do we enable them, protect them, make excuses for them, or do we love them enough to hold them accountable? I looked around the courtroom. Chief Cole could have used his influence to make this go away. Instead, he chose justice. He chose Mr. Martinez. He chose the values he spent his life upholding. That is courage. That is integrity. That is what real leadership looks like. The courtroom erupted in applause. People were crying. Veterans were saluting Chief Cole. Robert Martinez walked over to the chief and extended his good hand. Chief, Martinez said, your son is lucky to have a father like you. The chief shook his hand, overcome with emotion. Mr. Martinez, I'm sorry for what he did to you. He'll learn, Martinez said, and when he does, he'll make you proud. I can see it already. 6 months later, Derek Cole walked out of the county correctional facility a different man. He had lost weight, gained humility, and found purpose. His 200 hours at the VA hospital had turned into volunteer work that continued long after his sentence was complete. He apologized to Robert Martinez in a meeting that both men described as healing. Martinez became a mentor to Derek, teaching him about service, sacrifice, and the true meaning of strength. Derek's video apology went viral, viewed over 3 million times. Young people across the country saw what accountability looks like. They saw what happens when privilege meets justice. They saw what real transformation requires. Chief Cole attended every one of Derek's anger management sessions, not because he had to, but because he wanted to support his son's genuine change. Their relationship, broken by that day in court, slowly rebuilt on a foundation of honesty and mutual respect. And Derek Cole, the arrogant man who once said, "My dad runs this town," now works as an advocate for veteran services, using his story to teach others about privilege, accountability, and redemption. My decision that day didn't just deliver justice. It saved a life, healed a family, and proved that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to protect someone from the consequences they need to face. If this story moved you, if you believe in this kind of justice, share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Like this video, if you honor our veterans and respect the courage it takes to choose justice over comfort. Subscribe for more incredible stories that prove compassion and accountability can coexist. And remember what I always say, real love isn't protecting people from consequences. It's supporting them through the consequences they need to become better. That's the courage of Chief Thomas Cole. That's the grace of Robert Martinez. And that's the kind of justice I deliver every single day. Justice served, Lessons learned. Comment below.